Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all my blessed beloveds out there in living and thriving land. You're watching Living and Thriving with Rustie, and I'm Rustie. My guest today is Alicia Trautwein. Might have said that wrong. She will correct me, I'm sure. But she has a very interesting story that I think everybody needs to hear. And we're going to get into it. Dive in deep. Are we ready?
Absolutely.
Let's do this. So
Absolutely.
Alicia, did I pronounce your name wrong? And I apologize ahead of time if I did.
That's okay. You were really close. It's Trautwein.
Trautwein. Wine being my favorite sport. I mean, fruit. I mean. So Alicia, who are you? What do you do? And why do you do what you do?
Yeah, so I am an autism advocate and motivational speaker. I do that primarily because the journey started with my 3 children being diagnosed with autism, and then subsequently me being diagnosed with autism afterwards, and a lack of awareness for, especially not only multiples on the spectrum as, from a parenting perspective, but also girls on the spectrum. Two of my 3 children are girls. And so they received later diagnosis, or my son received a very early diagnosis. And seeing that big change in the field really, inspired me to start sharing our story and kind of sharing our research along the way.
So how do you feel being an adult with this diagnosis? Do you think that you would have had less obstacles as a child if they would have been more aware?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, it was quite a long time ago now, and different times. So there wasn't as much awareness even when it came to boys on the spectrum. It wasn't even something we were aware of until I have a younger brother. He was diagnosed at 10, and that was after we had moved states. And so I think that there was a lot that definitely would have changed, but as an adult looking back, I can at least understand why things happened the way they happened. I can look back and understand things and be more accepting of who I was as a child.
So talk to me about what it's like to be a parent of 3 autistic children, and what kind of, where are they on the spectrum? I was a paraeducator, and I have friends with autistic children, and they're all very unique in their needs. Some have textural issues, some have audio issues, some don't have any verbal desire whatsoever. I don't know if it's capability or just desire,
Yeah, it's we definitely have a hodgepodge of different needs in our house, and so it definitely makes things a challenge sometimes, but definitely keeps me on my toes. My son, the reason his diagnosis came so quickly, at 19 months, he lost all words. And now speaking to him, you'd have no clue. But, we went through several years of speech therapy and working on those needs. And he is very sensory seeking. He needs, big hugs all the time, crashing into things. My oldest on the spectrum, she's kind of quite the opposite. She's always been very verbal, but she's been quiet, kind of reserved, very sensory avoiding, doesn't like loud noises, doesn't like bright lights, very, much would rather be in her room and in the dark and be more than happy in those environments. And then our middle daughter, she's kind of in the middle of it all. There are certain things that she relates more to her older sister, certain to her brother, certain things completely not like any of them. And so there's a varying different needs. I mean, we have all sorts of sound needs and light needs and texture needs. And it's just learning to kind of balance those and keep things to where everybody can figure out how to work together to help each other out.
So give me a day in your life. I mean, you have a very busy day.
Yes, always. From the time I get up to the time I go to bed, for sure. So our girls, they both, we do have special education services for them for the bus, which is very helpful because they have to get on the bus at before 7 a.m. And so I don't have to worry about kind of trying to drag my son along with them. So thankfully I can have them go out the front door, but we are up by 6 a.m., getting everybody's routines going, making sure we have the right medications in, all their stuff lined up for them and ready to go out the door. My son, I do homeschool him right now just because with virtual schooling, it was just not going well for him. And he really can't handle masks. He doesn't go out in public very often. just because of that, because his sensory needs just masked are just too much for him. And so we do a lot of homeschooling, working around the house, you know, always trying to find heavy stuff for him to do and do those heavy activities like, you know, helping in the garden, helping to carry the laundry, things like that to give him that sensory input, you know, constantly preparing meals and making sure we have everything set up snack-wise for everybody's individual needs, you know, and then they get home from school and it's, you know, same routine as every other parent. There's homework, there's wind down time. We do try to make sure every day they after school, they get 30 minutes of time by themselves, just to kind of decompress. But then it's also from there telling me about their day and going through homework, working on meals and routines and all that good stuff, and going to bed and starting it all over the next day.
What was the reasoning that you decided to be an advocate for autism children or autism in general? What was your spark?
Well, for me, it had a lot to do with, you know, the misdiagnosis of my daughters. That was a big thing. We had been taking, our girls had been seeing psychiatrists since they were 2, that there was clear problems going on, and yet we couldn't get a proper diagnosis. No one even considered autism at all. And it wasn't until my son had started the diagnosis, you know, process at 19 months that my then middle daughter, you know, middle child, well, I was like, you know what? She was very similar as a child. Let's go ahead and change up psychiatrists and see what we can do. And my son was diagnosed, you know, right before his 2nd birthday. 6 weeks later, she was 8 years old and she was finally diagnosed with autism. And then a year later, after they both had an autism diagnosis, then it was like, okay, well, you know, the oldest, she's very much, you know, there's a lot of similarities, got her screened as well. And so we had these back-to-back diagnoses. And when I was looking online, there really wasn't a ton about parenting multiple children on the spectrum and trying to find that balance. There was tons of information from a doctor's perspective, but there wasn't that real life, here's what I'm doing. And then, you know, there's also the fact that there just wasn't a lot on girls. And so between those different things and having past experience, you know, with my little brother being autistic, working with autistic adults, even when I was a, you know, restaurant manager, that I was like, you know what, this is, you know, so much a part of my life. We're just going to start sharing our journey. And that's when I started getting more stories from people around the world and parent struggles. And that's when I started to really go into the advocacy side of it, because there's just so much, you know, even in the United States, we have, you know, a lot more awareness and a lot more resources. There's so many people here missing, you know, resources still. And then around the world, there's certain areas that there's no resources at all.
Yeah.
And so having, you know, those type of stories being brought to me, you know, directly from the parents, I definitely wanted to share as much as I could, because, you know, I might not be able to help a lot, but if they see something that, oh, that might help my, you know, my routine. If that's all it does, then great, you know, and that's kind of where that spark came from.
I think it's really challenging when you have a household filled with very, very precise. I mean, you have to be very precise with a lot of children who are on the spectrum, or they melt down. I think it's challenging, but I love the fact that you're willing to share that space and your tips and tricks and the things that you do to navigate a world that's not fully understood. Whether you're a doctor or a psychologist or a mom, you know, it's not completely understood. And every year I feel like there's a new, wow, this is what we missed, and we could be doing it better this way, and we can do, but there's not enough communication. And I love the fact that you're part of that advocacy to help communicate and navigate those uncharted waters, as it were.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's one of those things where there is this disconnect between doctors and, you know, parents. And it's not because either side doesn't want to share the story, they just don't always know how to connect. Because I've spoken with many psychiatrists that, you know, on a, you know, advocacy level, speaking to them, and they want to know these things. They want to know what it's like, because they aren't living it. They have the, you know, they have the textbook, they have what they see in office, but they don't have that real life experience of, this is what 24/7 feels like. Yeah. This is what's working, this is what's not working.
What
And
do you,
as those types of keep happening, it makes it better for everyone.
what do you as a parent, is a father still involved? Do you have a husband or a boyfriend? Is your children's father still involved?
Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
you're breaking up for a minute. Yeah, so my husband, we've been married 14 years now. And so he's definitely very helpful. We do try to keep track of routines, and most of the time, it's one of those things where it's very hard for two different people to, keep up with every routine. So I do my best to write everything down, to put stuff, we use Alexas and Siris and all that stuff to kind of let each other know this is, here's what's in the calendar. So make sure you don't overschedule yourself because I need you for this time. And, when it comes to bedtime routines, our two youngest still want to be tucked in. And so we cannot do that at the exact same moment by ourselves. And the few very rare times that my husband or I haven't been home to kind of help the other in that situation, it is chaotic. It is very stressful and overwhelming because their bedtimes are the same time. And if they're not the same time, you have one awake without the other. And you don't want them wandering the house while you're tucking the other one in.
How do you two take care of and maintain your relationship with each other with so many demands? I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I can't say it's easy. It's definitely, it takes, like I said, it's work. It's taking time. Sometimes it's 10, 15 minutes after the kids go to bed, just sitting down and talking. Or while he's at work, having text conversations, just because that's a time that you can kind of catch up with each other, without that. And then trying to schedule some time to go out by yourselves and kind of have that time away from the children as well.
Yeah. I think the best part of being a parent is when they just smile at you and they've got it. They like something new and creative had just hit their eyesight or sensory, and they're just explosive with joy and love. And you as a parent are like, oh, this is why I gave birth to you. Talk to us about moments where you're just amazed about how beautiful your life is.
It's honestly every day, having three kids with very different needs and seeing the, therapies and the struggles they've gone through to get to these milestones that a lot of parents do take for granted. They don't realize how important those, first things are. The kids being able to ride a bike is a huge deal, or sometimes it's just, hey, that they were able to brush their teeth on their own. Things like that those big, those are big steps for them that we get excited about, or like, yes, you did it, or, oh, you put the plate by the sink, like, that's awesome. You didn't just run off and, leave it there, But it's exciting because you realize that they're picking up on these cues and the things that you're working towards are helpful towards them. And, my daughter, she came home with she decided in her facts class, which is what we used to call home ec, and she decided out of nowhere, and this is the second youngest with autism, and she decided to make a Pikachu stuffed animal for her brother.
Aww.
And that she decided to take her time as a project at school to make that for him. And then when she brought it home, even without any prompting, my son was happily responsive. Mm-hmm. Yes, Bubba? What? Okay, I'm on a call. Sorry.
That's okay.
And the joys
I'm a parent. I get
it. But yeah, and so he was able to respond correctly and was very happy. It was a very sweet moment.
I love it. I think that you're only given I think you're only given what you're supposed to receive so that you can learn and get through it. What are top 3 things that you would advise a new parent? So top 3 things that you think would be really good advice for parents who are just starting to navigate the world of autism?
Now, the biggest thing I would say is first, just taking it one day at a time. Try not to overstress with, you're bombarded with so much information, do all these therapies, you're supposed to do this way and all these things. And, as long as you're working to help your child with things, that's all that matters. Second thing I would say is come up with a routine, that when not only does routine help your child, it helps you. That way, what's coming, you can get into, that, rhythm of doing things a way that works, and then adjusting that routine as you discover what works for your family. And then third would honestly being, remember to take time for yourself. That's one big thing, parents, I've seen it time and time again, I'm sure you have as well, is that especially when they're starting to navigate things that, caregiver burnout is real. And they're constantly trying to fit in everything they need to fit in, give their child everything, and they forget to take care of themselves. And, when we do that, we're not able to take care of anyone, including ourselves. And so taking, even if it's 5-10 minutes a day even if it's hiding in the bathroom for 10 minutes, reading a book or whatever, or flipping through social media, whatever brings you a few minutes of peace and calm, just having that time for yourself will help you better be able to help your child.
What kinds of activities do you recommend? I know that with my friend and her children who were on the spectrum, we would do absolutely everything. She was very clear that the spectrum is not going to change the family dynamics of moving and going and exploring. And I had a lot of respect for her because it could be a lot of work, especially when they get overstimulated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we do things, one thing that my kids, we've always done, and it's kind of just something that, whether it's all the kids and my husband, the whole family, or, my husband and I, or just whatever breakup it is that we've always loved going out for nature hikes. And one way that we were able to make it more exciting for the kids as well as us was we started doing geocaching years ago. And I don't know if you've ever done geocaching before or heard of that. But yeah, it's so fun because then we would look for ones that the kids were, kid friendly, that had the big toys in it. And it was like finding little, treasure trunks for them is what it felt like for them. And so it was a way to get them out and be excited to have something to focus on, but for us to be able to get out and move and walk around. Mm-hmm. And so finding little things like that, me definitely getting out and moving. That was the biggest thing for us, is just because it's so easy to get stuck in your house trying to do things, or just going to a doctor's office, and you don't move, you don't explore the world around you. And so, I'm big on just going out and doing anything. A couple of years ago, my husband and I started doing some canoeing for the first time. And, just a fun little thing. And it definitely was fun. It was hot and hard to row it, but it was something really exciting, different, that we're like, okay, well, we don't really have any extra hobbies. Let's come up with something, So that's what we came up with. And so just learning it, like you said, getting out in the world, trying new things and whatever works, something that you would want to do anyway, and just kind of adjusting it to the needs that you have.
What state do you live in?
So we live in Missouri.
Missouri. Are there a lot of resources in Missouri?
There actually are. There's quite a substantial amount of resources here, which we're very thankful for.
That's cool. And are you still able to work?
So I do all my work from home and do a lot of it through the advocacy, as well as recently I turned our website into it. It was able to go into a nonprofit so we can kind of continue sharing the advocacy a lot further, as well as within our community. And so getting those resources out to parents directly that wouldn't have them, and advocating for IEPs and things like that. And so constantly keeping busy that way, but a lot of my work, I'm able to keep it flexible so that I'm able to be here with the kids and my husband goes out to work. That way there's somebody that can go grab a child if need be, or work through problems at any time.
Yeah. That's one of the caveats that I think becomes overwhelming for new parents. They don't realize that you have to have a level of flexibility. What was your original kind of thinking in regards to how you're going to be flexible? I love the advocacy part. That's all I do all day long. It's so huge for me personally. It's my spiritual thing, my spiritual aim. But as a parent, you have a lot to juggle. in general, but then you have, children with special needs, and how do you feel like, I'm trying to articulate it in such a way. A lot of parents hurt because they don't know how to navigate. And what I'm trying to dig out of you is, how do you reconcile that pain? It's not your fault as a parent. This is the way God made them. You can do this. You were given this gift to do this process. What was your guidance and kind of coping mechanisms in the beginning to learn how to be flexible and accept that all is good?
Yeah, it was, I have my moment. It's the grief cycle. It's whatever, parents go through it. And it's something that I try to advocate about a lot, because parents, while everyone goes through the grief cycle in one way or another, no matter how much of it you go through, you still go through it, but it's not something that's talked about. And parents often feel bad because they're grieving, because they don't realize that they're not grieving their child as they are. They're grieving what they thought their child was going to be, or thinking that the thought, they might not do something. And, it's getting past that and realizing that it's not what you're thinking your child's going to be. It's just you helping support your child for what they want to do in life, and changing that narrative. But yeah, a big thing, in the beginning for me, I was very lucky, having my mom, she kind of went through that process with my little brother. So we had, I'd heard a lot from her on different ways to help, but it was a bumpy road. It definitely was a very bumpy road for us. And, learning to accept that it's okay to be sad sometimes, it's okay to be overwhelmed, but as long as you are realizing that, you do still need to move forward in that time, it's a day by day thing. And you kind of learn over time, like, okay, my kid's still the same kid they were before we walked into the doctor's office to get a diagnosis. They're the same after. There's not, that diagnosis doesn't change who your child is. And once you kind of realize that, and then you start working with them where they need you, then you can kind of start changing that narrative for your whole family.
Yeah, and I think that that's a huge portion of any scenario in which your children have special scenarios. You have to get over the grief part. We all have a fantasy of, how we think our daughter is going to be, or son, or whatever. They're going to be scientists and multi-bazillionaires and Nobel Peace Prize winners and all of this stuff. And yeah, they can be. They still can be. It's just not that easy road to navigate.
Absolutely. And yeah, and sometimes it's as funny as, like, with me, it wasn't even, a lot of it was different things of, like, cutting my daughter's hair. I'm sitting here as a mom, like, I don't want to cut short, but she needed it cut short for her sensory needs.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I was like fighting it tooth and nail. And I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? Her sister did the same thing, and I didn't fight this. Why am I fighting it? Just because I thought, oh, she has the long hair and that's her personality. And realizing, like, yeah, no, she's gone years with, horrendously messy hair because she can't handle the brushing. She doesn't like it touching her neck. So like, why am I fighting this? Of course I just need to cut it. It's not a big deal. It's just hair. But that was my, like, one of my little internal fights, because I was thinking, she needs to be this way. And it's like, no, she doesn't. Like, that's silly.
How do they interact with each other? Is it like love and hate, like all siblings are?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's all siblings. I've seen it, with kids that have 0 diagnosis and kids that have every diagnosis under the sun. They definitely love each other. They're definitely, there's a relationship there, but then they still fight. I have to keep a vehicle that's, I don't mind, but I have to keep a very large vehicle just to keep them from touching each other. Like, just so they cannot bump themselves into each other, because I'm like, there needs to be barriers between them so that the entire ride, I'm not pulling my hair out because they're screaming about touching each other, or somebody being upset because it's too loud. And, and so, they do that, but at the same time, we've had, bullying situations in the past, and my oldest daughter took care of it. And she was like, she knew that, even though she might pick on her sister, but no one else is allowed to pick on her sister. And so she made, she talked to him and dealt with it, and it stopped. And I thought that was really sweet, because I'm like, well, as much as you guys fight, at least I know you care about each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just try to find similar interests. They're 6, 13, and 14. And those aren't exactly easy ages to begin with to get them to have similar interests. And even the 13 and 14-year-old, there's not the same interest always, but there are certain things. They all like, different styles of art. They all like Pokemon. They all like playing on the Nintendo. And so, and they, for the most part, they enjoy nature, as long as I'm not making them walk too far, or it's too hot or too cold, which basically I figured if it's between 70 and 72, I'm safe on how comfortable it is outside. But, we try to find little things that kind of fit everyone's needs, that we know at least there's a base interest of. There might be varying different, levels of how much they love it, but they can at least like the situation.
Yeah, no kidding. Mine's turning 16 in June, so I feel you on that whole, uptick on hormone, eye rolling, and oh my God, really? You said that, Mom? God.
Oh yeah, it never fails. It kicks in. I've been pretty lucky, but I definitely had our our fun parts of the journey. I still have to fix our front door because my daughter got mad, and she wasn't even meaning to slam it, but she slammed it and it broke part of the lock. And she was just coming in upset from school, and it like closed it real hard, and it broke the lock. And I'm like, how did you do that? But it's the hormones. It's just this age in general. So
absolutely,
makes it fun.
So are you guys able to do prom or anything like that? I don't know if you guys are in lockdown or.
So we'll do that next year. Thankfully, we didn't have to worry about this year. There was originally an 8th grade dance that hasn't happened. Won't be happening. They are going to be doing some type of field day still instead for their ages, which would be nice. So it's not as formal. I'm not sure how prom will go next year when the oldest gets to that. I'm curious to see. She's definitely not a girly girl and definitely does not wear dresses. So if she goes, I have a feeling we're going to go street shopping or something fun. That'll be, definitely kind of cool to do. So
why not?
So we're just going to see. Yeah, hey, I'm all for it. I mean, I don't really wear dresses, so I completely understand that one tenfold. So, we'll see what she comes up with for that outfit and if she goes. But either way, it'll be fun, whatever she does.
I think it's great. So what kinds of tips, tricks, advice can you give people in their last couple of minutes? And where do we find more information about you if somebody's watching the show and they want to have some coaching, some advocacy as they're going through this process?
Yeah, the biggest tip I'd leave on would definitely be just to, find your people, find your group of, parents that understand. And it's great if you have somebody local and there's a support group locally, but if not, building a community online, social media, every social media platform has some type of parenting group for special needs or people that you can kind of chat with and trade tips and tricks on. And just either way, building a community of people that, can understand your needs, because it does vary, and it is hard for someone who doesn't live a life with having to make those accommodations to fully understand what you're going through. So definitely finding that support. So as for finding me, my website is themomkind.com, and there I do have autism coaching for anyone who definitely wants some one-on-one help. And then I'm also on pretty much every social media with the @themomkind. And then actually have TikTok now as well. That was one of those fun things that happened over the quarantine. And so that's just my name, Alicia Trautwein, on there. And so that's where I share a lot of tips, because a lot of people ask me questions that I try to get in under 60 seconds to answer. But yeah, it's a fun platform that's a lot more educational now, which is really cool. And so yeah, I'm a little bit of everywhere.
Well, and I love the fact that you are able to really have the truthful conversations of what it's like to be a parent, and also what it's like to have autism. We didn't really touch too much on that this show, but maybe in the future we can reconnect and talk about what it's like to be an adult with autism, because I'm sure you go through your own adult challenges on top of, trying to rear in 3 children who are very different. But I don't want.
Definitely love to do that sometime.
Huh?
I said, yeah, I said, absolutely. I'd love to talk to you one time on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just thrilled to meet you. I'm glad you've done what you're doing what you're meant to do. I mean, that's really cool. And I know that you're helping a lot of people. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Any last parting words, my friend?
Oh, I'm good, but thank you.
Okay. All right.
Have me on here.
Yay. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're watching Living and Thriving with Rustie. I'm Rustie, and that was Alicia. Check out her information down below. I know a lot of people get confused navigating the world of autism and all the misnomers and untruths, and she lives it every single day, and she can definitely smack you out of the untruths and strengthen your spine a little bit, because it's going to be a ride, baby. But they're great kids, every single one of them. They're beautiful. They're made for your learning and to inspire and motivate this world to be a better place, because why not, right? So know that you're loved, know that you're beautiful, and do something kind for somebody, whether it's smile. You can smile with your eyes if you're still having to wear a mask. You can smile with your mouth, you know, wave to a stranger, buy somebody a cup of coffee. I don't know. It's just really good to be a nice person and not the other part. Just saying. Until next time, you're watching Living and Thriving with Rustie. Take care.